Well, Hannah, do you have a comfort food? Like, what's your go-to food when you're feeling terrible?
So probably like mentally terrible, salt and vinegar chips all the way.
Salt and vinegar chips?
Salt
Okay,
and
I
vinegar
like
chips,
those too. I feel that.
good. The kettle cooked ones specifically. I don't like the Lay's ones unless they're the kettle cooked.
Okay.
But have you ever had Miss Vicky's salt and vinegar
Yeah.
chips?
Yes, I
Those
love
are my
those.
favorite. Oh,
Miss Vicky's also makes like I feel like it's Miss Vicky's that makes like they make like a cherry barbecue one too. Those are really good as well. And I like anything. There's a couple companies of potato chips that are like, well, there's one an East Coast company. It's like Fox potato chips. Oh my God, those things are like chef's kiss, no matter what they are, no matter what flavor, because they're like very few ingredients and they're like thick and they're like, oh, it's hard to get them. We have
yeah.
a restaurant here that like imports them from the East Coast, but yeah. So if you're feeling just kind of shitty, just having a bad day, um, it's fine. We're gonna be saying that word later. So break the ice on the swearing. So sorry. I'll try not to. But your go-to is salt and vinegar chips.
Yes, no matter what.
Yeah.
There have been times where I've consumed an entire bag in one sitting.
Like the
Maybe,
big bags?
yeah, yeah. Like
Oh
I have done
man,
that.
that's a
I have
lot of
done
chips.
in it. Oh my God, it kills my stomach. Like obviously
Okay,
eating that
yeah.
many is not good, but I
That's a
have
lot
done
of
that.
salt.
Yeah, yeah. So I try not to do that. Now I put it in a little baggie, like a little Ziploc bag, and try to ration out how much I could eat.
Or a bowl. You could put them into a bowl
Yeah,
or something too. But
I hate.
I'm just gonna warn you, since you are the young one, that as you get into your 30s, don't do that. Don't. Your hands or ankles or something will start swelling as you get older from all the sodium. So like just
Okay.
don't kill your organs with that much salt. Like right
Okay.
now your cells are like it's fine, we'll rejuvenate. And then like when you get older, your skin will like dry. And like you just too much salt's like not good for anybody. So
I'll be like SpongeBob. No.
well, my favorite like go-to comfort food I think is peanut butter. Like I could do a smooth or a crunchy, either one. Jif for sure. I try to like limit if it's not a Jif because I'm being better about not having like palm oil and like inflammatory things and added salt and things like that. So like I will do like a ground peanuts into peanut butter. But man, I love me some peanut butter. And it was even packed in my suitcase when I took a trip to Vietnam in my 20s because I was going to be there for 2 weeks. And my boyfriend's mother, who was part of like why we were traveling, like was like, you need to take this with you. You eat it all the time. So she was very sweet to like pack it. I wasn't like, I have to have it. Like I jokingly said that, but she like legit packed it for me. So I was very excited. Um, and I think it stems from like my mother giving me like a spoonful of peanut butter before my nap. I think because it has like the tryptophan equivalent of like eating turkey. I think she was like, this will settle her down. So
Oh,
anyway, it's
wait,
high in
that's
fat. I'm
interesting.
sure it's probably not that great for you to eat as much peanut butter as I probably consume. Um, I'm not like keeping it at my desk and eating it out of the jar, but I do go to that when I'm feeling kind of crappy. Well, this week, our movie is 100% my comfort food. This is like, just like peanut butter, it has the same effect. So, before we start breaking it down, you are listening to Millennial Meets Gen Z 90's edition, the podcast where one of us lived through the 90's and the other is obsessed and yet discovering it for the first time. I'm Allison, I'm the millennial.
I'm Hannah. I'm the Gen Z.
And today we're diving into another 90's classic, You've Got Mail from 1998. Now, you can watch this movie on Netflix right now. I highly recommend getting it right now. Or if you're like me, maybe you own it on Amazon, but otherwise, you will have to rent it on Amazon, YouTube, Google, Apple Plus. Okay, well, we'll wait while you go watch it. Are you watching it? I hope you're watching it. I hope
So
you're watching it right now.
go watch it. Go
Go
watch it.
watch it. Either way, we'll wait. Okay, welcome back. So the synopsis this week is the struggling boutique bookseller Kathleen Kelly, played by Meg Ryan, hates Joe Fox, played by Tom Hanks, the owner of a corporate Fox Books chain store that just moved across the street. Now, when they meet online, however, they begin an intense and anonymous internet romance, oblivious of each other's true identity. Eventually, Joe learns that the enchanting woman he's involved with is actually his business rival. He must now struggle to reconcile his real life dislike for her with his cyber love he's come to feel. Now, this movie was written and directed by Nora Ephron, who is known for When Harry Met Sally, another movie with Meg Ryan, Hanging Up, also with Meg Ryan, and writing and directing movies like The New Bewitched, Julie and Julia, Michael, Sleepless in Seattle, and Mixed Nuts. It was also written by Delia Ephron, who is Nora's younger sister. She's also written for movies including Mixed Nuts, Michael, Hanging Up, and she wrote the books, The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, and the screenplay for that as well. I love that one. And she wrote The New Bewitched. Now, this movie, before we get started, is played or is based on a play called Parfumerie by Miklos Laszlo. It was a romantic holiday comedy focusing on employees in the 1930s Budapest gift shop. So they were two employees that worked together, and she came to work with him, and they didn't know that they were actually corresponding over letters as well that had been out in the newspaper. Um, so like she placed an ad in the newspaper or something. At least that's how all of the follow-up movies go. And then he like responds to it and then they correspond with each other and then she just happens to get a job at his store. So this play, like I just said, inspired several movies, including The Shop Around the Corner, which is where this comes from, In the Good Old Summertime, and She Loves Me. There are a few similarities to this movie, including lines straight from the movies and play. And we'll talk about these and dive into it as we go through the movie during our recap. But I definitely recommend. I watched The Shop Around the Corner. That was pretty good. In the Good Old Summertime was very lovely. And I have seen the play She Loves Me, but I have not yet seen the movie She Loves Me. It's like a musical and it's very, very good. And I've seen it on stage, but I have a couple of times now. But I have not yet seen the movie itself. So,
Oh, interesting. Spacing a
so
lot. Crazy.
yes. And those all came before You've Got Mail, obviously, because You've Got Mail was like the digital interpretation of this romance. So, before we go further, what did you think of this one, Hannah? And do you have a favorite character?
I so okay. Don't hate me. Don't hate me. This is not my favorite one. This is
Oh no.
not my favorite one. I don't know why. I just think movies that are a bit slower, I just have a really hard time watching. And
Mhm.
so I watched this movie
Sweet.
twice. So I watched this
Hmm.
movie twice because the first time I like wasn't able to fully get into it, and then the second time I was like, okay, I have to lock in and get into this. And I liked it. I liked the romantic aspect of it.
The writing movie, girl. You're like writing.
No, I did like that aspect. I liked the bookstore aspect. I liked the romance. I thought it was cute that they were emailing and stuff like that. I thought that was really cute. I this is gonna this might surprise you. This might surprise you. Okay.
Okay.
Joe was my favorite character.
Because he's sassy. He's like funny and yeah,
Yeah. No, that's
I
literally
understand
why.
that.
Yeah, I don't know. One, I will say I don't think I like Tom Hanks as a romantic lead necessarily, but in this specific,
Shut your face hole. I'm just kidding. I
no,
get that. I actually get that.
I don't know. I don't know, but I liked his character. I thought he had a very well written character, and I liked his character development. I thought that was cool. It was kind of saying a man who was very selfish learning to be selfless. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It was nice, and it gave me hope. It gave me hope in humanity, and it was kind of cool that he like owned a corporation of sorts, and with the political standing in our world, I thought it was kind of cool seeing like small businesses versus big businesses. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I thought that
It's
was really
about
interesting.
capitalism for sure. Now, the other movies aren't really about, I mean, they take place in a shop, but they're not really about capitalism. They're maybe about like, um, I don't know, like becoming a boss versus like being an employee. Um, and there's a little bit of dynamic in the other, older in the play, in the movies. But yeah, this was more about like the capitalistic fight for the small business owner, for
Yeah,
sure.
which I liked that. I liked that. And obviously supporting small businesses, I thought that was cool that that was portrayed. I thought that was super interesting. I don't know. I love when things can get slightly political. That's like my favorite thing. So I liked that. I just thought it was a little bit slower of a movie, but as you know, I love
Yeah.
romance movies. Like that's my thing. So I did like that. And I would say I definitely liked this movie better than like some of the action movies we've watched for sure.
Okay.
It's like not my least favorite by any means.
Well, this is one of my favorites, so I won't take it to heart.
Okay.
But if you rank it lower than She's All That, we're gonna have fighting words later. So,
Okay. It is ranked lower than Can't Hardly Wait. I won't lie. I love Can't Hardly Wait. I still can't get over that. Like I'm gonna rewatch that movie.
okay, I like that one. I appreciate that one. And I think like you come to appreciate things for different reasons too. So, well, let's rewind on this one and we'll dive into it and then we'll get your thoughts along the way. So we open on a CAD view of New York City, and it takes you to a New York apartment. Inside, Kathleen Kelly wakes up to a start when her boyfriend Frank starts raving about how the entire workforce of the state of Virginia had to have solitaire removed from their computers because they hadn't done any work in 6 weeks. He is evidently against technology. He leaves for work, and Kathleen Kelly goes over to her computer to check her email. And now, can we just talk about her apartment for one split second? It's like this cute hodgepodge, like farm girl chic with like books everywhere and stained glass windows and flowers and florals. And that was like super popular in the 90's. I think my mom like decorated our living room that way. It was just very like, like light colors and it was like airy and florals and white curtains and it gives me that same kind of vibe. But I love
Yeah.
those stained glass windows.
I kind of liked the like to me it was almost more boho, but more like lighter than boho. You get what I'm saying? Like not as like dark as boho typically is, but it kind of still gave me the same vibes with like the floral aspect of it. Because I
Yeah.
associate boho with like plants and flowers.
Yeah. And so we hear the dial-up of the internet, for all of you Gen Z and Gen Alpha who don't know what that sound is that you'll hear in this movie. It was your computer connecting to the internet over a phone line. We used to have to wait. And then we hear and see AOL signing on for Shop Girl, which was her handle, and telling her, "Welcome, you've got mail," which is a gimmick by AOL at the time when you had email.
Wait, that's
Um,
real? Like that's an actual thing? That's what AOL did?
yeah, it said, "Welcome, you've got mail." Like they didn't just make it up for the movie, Hannah. That's part of the AOL program.
I should know this. My mom has AOL.
It doesn't do it anymore. It was like back in the day when you logged in. Because it wanted you to be excited. Now it would be like, you got mail, you got mail, you got mail, you got mail, because you're getting spam every 10 seconds. So, like, it doesn't do it anymore. I'm surprised anybody has AOL anymore, but still, like,
Yeah,
that's
my
a whole other conversation. However, it used to tell you that. Okay.
weird. I kind
And
of thought that was like just for not gimmick. I just thought it was like for the movie to be like, oh, she has mail. Like there's an email.
no,
I didn't realize that was like
no, no, that was the thing. That was why they did it. Yep.
I'm like
Also,
shook about this.
Also, in the movie, just to be clear for Gen Z and Gen Alpha, it did not log in that fast. It took much longer to connect to the internet, and you would be waiting for what felt like an eternity. I'm sure it was like a minute or maybe two, depending on how bad it was. And sometimes it wouldn't connect at all, and you'd have to start the process all over again. It would be like, is like making noises, not like fax noises, but it would like make crazy noises as it was connecting. Yeah, you had to hope that no one else, if you had somebody else in your home, they couldn't be on the phone when you were trying to connect unless you had a separate phone line for your internet. It's a whole thing. So, anyway, so we see her getting her mail, right? Now, Kathleen Kelly is played by Meg Ryan, who is known for her iconic role in When Harry Met Sally, Sleepless in Seattle, City of Angels, IQ, Anastasia. I don't know if you knew she was the voice of Anastasia.
Yeah, I wrote that down that she was the voice. I thought that was so cool. I love that movie.
She was also in Hanging Up with our lovely Diane Keaton and Lisa Kudrow from Friends. And she was in Kate and Leopold. I really love that one. She was in the movie called Against the Ropes, and she was also in another movie called The Women. It's a pretty funny movie. Um, the email she has is titled Brinkley from NY152, and it talks about his dog Brinkley, who loves the streets of New York and eats bits of pizza and bagel off the sidewalk, although he prefers to buy it, and sleeps around all day on a green pillow. Then he says, "Don't you love New York in the fall? Makes me want to buy school supplies. I would send you a bouquet of newly sharpened pencils if I knew your name and address. But on the other hand, this not knowing has its charms." We're introduced to Joe Fox, the man on the other side of the email. He waits for his girlfriend, who is rushing around to get coffee and get out the door to leave. He also signs into AOL and hears, "Welcome, you've got mail." Now, Joe Fox is played by Tom Hanks, who we know from our recent watch, A League of Their Own. He played a completely different character in that, so maybe that wasn't a good one to transition to this one, but that's okay. But many others know him from Forrest Gump, Castaway, Big, Philadelphia, The Green Mile, That Thing You Do, The Money Pit, Turner and Hooch, Apollo 13, Toy Story, where he plays Woody, Saving Private Ryan, Catch Me If You Can, The Terminal, Polar Express, where he plays the conductor, Cars, where he plays Woody the car, The Da Vinci Code, Captain Phillips, Saving Mr. Banks, where he plays Mr. Banks is like the start of Mary Poppins. Sully, and so many other things. He's like in so many things. Um, he was also in two other movies with Meg Ryan, including their first one, Joe versus the Volcano, and Sleepless in Seattle, as I mentioned. That's a good one. That's a slow movie. It's even slower. Yeah, I don't know if you'll necessarily like the movie, but I think that you'd like his romantic character in that one. It's very sweet. It's very charming. It's a little bit younger for both of them. So this was the third movie that they did together.
Yeah, I was considering watching that one, actually. I was considering that
So
because after doing some research on what they were in, I was like, wait, they're both in this? Maybe I
I
should watch
bet.
this.
Well, we've mentioned it a few times, and I
Yeah.
still think it's going to be the one that you fall asleep to.
Yeah.
Um,
Sleepless
but
Seattle. I will
is
watch.
that, yeah, it's a very slow movie. It takes place a lot of times like they're calling in late at night kind of thing. Um,
Okay.
okay. Well, his email says, "Dear friend, I like to start my notes to you as we're already in the middle of a conversation. I pretend that we're the oldest and dearest friends instead of what we actually are, people who don't know each other's names and met in a chat room where we both claimed we'd never been before. What will NY152 say today, I wonder? I turn on my computer. I wait impatiently as it connects. I go online and my breath catches in my chest until I hear three little words. You've got mail. I hear nothing, not even the sound of the city streets of New York, just the beat of my own heart. I have mail from you." As we see New York City opening their businesses for the morning, we hear the song Dreams by the Cranberries, which is definitely my go-to song for when I feel like the world has possibilities. Like, I think that song just is like possibilities.
That's so
Um,
fair. That's a song I have heard before, and that is actually such a great analysis of it.
yes, I'm obsessed with that. Okay. It's just probably because I've seen this movie like 100 billion times. Um, I will actually pause for 1 second just to say, when I was watching this movie, for the three times that I've seen it since we were talking since last week, actually, the first time I was watching it, I was like repeating I was saying the words along with the characters as I was like watching it on my phone, and I was going around and I was making dinner and I was like putting away dishes and I was doing things. And my boyfriend kept going, "Who are you talking to?" And I'd be like, leave me alone. And then I walk to the other room and I'd be continuing. And then he finally was like, who, seriously, who are you talking to? I was like, I'm watching the movie and I'm not talking to anyone. He's like, but you keep talking. I was like, I know all the words to this movie, so I'm saying them out loud. But he was very upset that I was like talking to someone, it seemed like.
Oh my God.
Um, I was talking to the movie, for gosh sakes.
Come on.
Okay. Well, Joe Fox heads to a building under construction, and his business partner and best friend, Kevin, is giving him updates. He's not listening, and he responds with, I hear nothing. Not a sound on the city streets, just the beat of my own heart. Now, Kevin thinks he got engaged to Patricia, which Joe Fox dismisses quickly, but he says he loves Patricia and says one of my favorite lines, Patricia is amazing. Patricia makes coffee nervous. Then they talk about announcing their presence to the neighborhood, and Kevin says, they're going to hate us. And Joe says, we're going to seduce them with the discounts and deep armchairs and then get them with their cappuccino. They're going to sell them cheap books and legal addictive stimulants, and we learn that Fox Books is a superstore. Now, Kevin Jackson is played by Dave Chappelle, and many, many people forget that he's even in this movie, as Dave Chappelle is in this movie. But his character is so critical to this movie, and it actually is his character is the one that ties it to all the like the original play, and a lot of his lines tie it to the original play. Plus, his character is so iconic. Dave Chappelle is a comedian, but he's in movies like Robin Hood, Men in Tights, The Nutty Professor, Con Air, and A Star Is Born.
Oh, bookstores.
Meanwhile, yeah. Meanwhile, nearby, Kathleen Kelly is opening up her small children's bookstore and loves New York in the fall and smells the scotch tape, the school supplies. Christina says, you're in love. And Kathleen brushes it off and then she goes, oh, yeah, I'm in love with Frank. I'm practically living with Frank. She completely forgot about Frank for a minute. Christina starts to suspect something else is going on, and Kathleen confides in her. Is it infidelity if you're involved with someone on email? And Kathleen says it's getting confusing. Christina says that they've like asks her if they've had cyber sex, which is not their relationship at all, and Kathleen tells her that. Now, Christina Polsker is played by Heather Burns, who's known for What's Your Number? Miss Congeniality, where she says her perfect date is April 25th. It's not too hot, not too cold, and all you need is a light jacket. Which is a very popular meme. Come April 25th, you will see it all over social media. But she's also in 2 Weeks Notice, and she's in the Bewitched movie, among a bunch of other things. So Kathleen tells Christina that she met this person in the Over 30 chat room online, and they started chatting about random things. Chat rooms were a place that you used to go to when you got online to talk to strangers. Just for all those Gen Z, Gen Alpha, you talk to strangers. So she was in an Over 30, no kids allowed chat room. But they
Okay.
started talking about chatting about random things. They didn't talk about anything personal. Christina says he could be the next person to walk into the store. And just then, the other employee of Kathleen's store, George, walks in. They ask if he's online, but he says, as far as I'm concerned, the internet is just another way of being rejected by women. And
That's fair though. That's very
it
fair.
still is to this day. Has not changed much.
No.
Now, George Pappas is played by Steve Zahn, and he is one of my absolute favorite actors of all time. He's in a really great movie called Sahara. It's a great comedy. Highly recommend it. It's a 2000s movie, so it's not in our list. But definitely recommend the watch. I laugh every time. He's also in the movie Joyride, Rescue Dawn, and The War for Planet of the Apes. He plays alongside Tom Hanks in That Thing You Do, so we will be seeing him again, and I will be giving little heart eye emoji all over that movie later. So just then, an older woman, Birdie, walks in and asks what they're talking about, and Christina tells her cyber sex. Birdie admits she's tried it once, but she kept getting a busy signal. They open the store. Now, Bertie Conrad is played by Jean Stapleton. She is known for her role in Up the Down Staircase, Clute, Michael, and more importantly, All in the Family, which is where many of the older generations will know her from as Edith Bunker. Now, that was the show that Rob Reiner, if you remember in First Wives Club, he's the plastic surgeon. So we've talked about Rob Reiner, and he's like a director, and we've talked about him for a lot of different movies through the season through this season. Anyway, so he was in that show with her, where
Okay.
he plays her son-in-law. And he's the
Oh,
one that just passed away.
okay. Oh
Okay.
my gosh, wait, that's cool though. They're
Trying to
connected to.
remind you to like who the connections
Yeah,
are. Okay.
I do remember Rob Reiner. I have a question.
Sure.
So
Uh-oh.
I was trying to Google, like I
Is it about
tried.
the internet?
No, 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 no. Well, yeah. So I was trying to Google like who from our past movies like is in this prior to watching it, and it really only said Tom Hanks. But then it also said Steve. It said Steve was in it, or it said Steve was in Practical Magic, and I was like,
Steve Zahn might have been in Practical Magic. Did we talk about him before in Practical? I'm trying to remember what he would have been.
yeah. It said he was Jimmy Angelov, and I was like, I don't.
No,
I was so confused. So I wanted to
I
make
don't
sure I
think
wasn't because
so.
I was like, they don't look alike. Like the actors don't look alike at all.
No,
Yeah, and then when I Googled it again, like when I initially like Googled it, I was like, oh, like I was going through like what
he
specific movie.
was, yeah, no, he wasn't in it.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, okay, cool. I just wanted to make sure because I was like, I
I
don't
think
recognize.
that's the like IMDb AI, if that's what you're using. There's like a connector on IMDb and it uses AI. I think that thing makes things up all the time. So
So
just
Lucky
be
isn't
wary.
that? Okay, Lucky isn't that? Yeah, because that's what I was using. So
Yeah. Yeah. It makes stuff up all the
fascinating.
time. Yeah, sorry. Because I've tried to see if there's connections between movies and it'll make things up. And I'm like, there's no connection. Like, that person isn't in that movie. Like, I know that movie. And I'll like go back and research it. And like, it just makes crap up. So
Yeah, that's what
be
I had to do.
careful.
I was like, I don't think he's in this, but I just want to double check because like that would be
Yes, he is
crazy.
not in that. The only person I think would be Tom Hanks that we've seen in a movie. There will be people that were in other things with other people.
Okay.
Um, I think that's probably the best way to put that. Is that there will be movies we haven't seen, but other people we know have been in together.
Okay. Cool.
That makes
Yeah.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Because
Okay.
that's besides that, it was just Tom Hanks I found, and I was like, oh, we
Yes.
saw him in A League of Our Own. So
Yes, but
cool.
Steve's on not so much. But I do, if you want to
Okay.
watch the movie, I recommend Sahara. We will watch that thing you do later, so don't watch that yet.
Wow.
Back at Fox Books, Joe is meeting with his father and grandfather and talking about their acquisitions from the competition going under. And his dad is getting married again to Jillian. They bring up other competition like Shop Around the Corner, and the grandfather says he knows the owner, Cecilia Kelly. They might have had a date once or just exchanged letters. Um, Mail. It was called Mail. That's a line that I love. He said her daughter owns it now. Now, Joe's dad, Nelson Fox, is played by Dabney Coleman, who is known for his role in Tootsie, 9 to 5, and War Games. In the 90s, he was also in My President, He was also the president in My Date with the President's Daughter. That is with Will Friedle from Boy Meets World. And he also played the chief in the Inspector Gadget movie. He was also in Stuart Little, and he was the voice of the principal in Recess. If anybody ever watches Recess from the 90s, is a good cartoon. Um,
Never even heard of that. Okay.
so 9 to 5 is I think an 80s movie, and we've talked about it before, because it has like, well, it has like Dolly Parton in it. It has and I'm blanking right now for some reason. Um, it has Jane Fonda, who we've seen before, and Lily Tomlin, who we've seen before. So, um, there's like a duo. Lily Tomlin, yeah, we've talked about her before and we talked about 9 to 5. It's a really, really good movie. If
Right.
we ever do another 1980s throwback that's not on our list already, that will probably be one that we would add to the list. I mean, it's literally from 1980. So it is kind of really throwing back. Like usually we try to stay close to the 90s a little bit, but it's very much, we talked about it when we saw some of the other movies because it's very much like their boss is mistreating them at the office, and what do they do to take care of it?
Um,
He
I
plays
see.
the boss. Yeah.
Oh no.
Anyway, it's a good movie. I highly recommend it. It's a good play, it's a good musical, just great all around.
Okay. Cool.
Uh,
Yeah.
Joe's grandfather is played by Skylar Fox, or Skylar Fox, sorry, is his name, and he's played by John Randolph, who was in Heaven Can Wait, Serpico, and Escape from Planet of the Apes. Now, NY152 writes to Shop Girl about his father getting married again and how Jillian has bad taste in interior decorating. Shop Girl writes to NY152 about a butterfly on a subway who probably got off to buy a hat, which they'll regret because, as all hats are a regret or something, is what she says. Um, which I was like, that's rude. I love hats and I have lots of them, so I've never regretted buying a hat.
I think baseball
Um,
caps are really cute and like backwards caps and stuff like that are really cute. So I disagree with her.
Yeah, I mean, or a cowgirl hat, or like a
Yeah.
big bowler hat, or
A
a,
beanie?
a beanie. I mean, I love so many hats.
No.
Um, you would be actually surprised at how many hats I have. Okay, so NY152 writes to Shop Girl about the flour that gets pumped into the local bakery, and Shop Girl writes to NY152 about Pride and Prejudice, and then NY152 writes to Shop Girl about Starbucks orders and how it defines your sense of self. Tall, decaf, mochaccino.
That's
Um,
so true though. Like that's so true. Sometimes I
which
judge people off of it.
yeah, I do too. And I dated this guy once that used to order the sugar bear from Bigby, and like that made me question because I know the line in this movie, and it's like I grew up with it. So then, like when this guy that I went on a date with first ordered the sugar bear from Bigby, I was like, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Is it like overly sugary, I'm presuming?
It's supposed to be like a caramely, sugary drink, like
Uh,
very caramely with like whipped cream and caramel and extra sugar. I don't know. I've never had it, to be honest with you. But like a lot of but then I went to it because I had never really been to a Big B. And I went to a Big B then again, and I realized like all the drinks they used to be named like all sorts of weird bears. So these guys would have to come in and they'd have to order like the chocolate teddy bear or like the sugar bear or the sweet baby bear or whatever it would be. And I was like, well, this is like setting men up for like failure in terms of if it defines your sense of self. So, um, but then that gets into like the whole discussion about how Starbucks has like three words for large as their options. And even though they're supposed to be small, it's like in three different languages. Anyway, so does it really, maybe it doesn't define your sense of self. I don't know. We'll have to discuss that later.
we'll decide. We'll decide later.
We'll table this one. So the whole time we see that Joe and Kathleen live in the same neighborhood and they keep passing like ships in the night. The employees learn about the building of Fox Books nearby and they start to worry. And Kathleen just thinks that they're going to have a book district now and isn't worried. Now, back at home, Frank is setting up his typewriter. He's in love with the typewriter. And Kathleen points out that it's his third typewriter. And I get it. I like a good typewriter too. I have one and I like that thing is beautiful. I won't get rid of it.
I feel like I always forget that you have a typewriter because you've told me this at some point. That's so cool. Every time
Typewriter. I write my poems on it.
oh, that's beautiful. I love that. That's like so angsty too. I feel
So angsty.
so grunge.
uh, anyway, um, so Frank is trying to convince her that she'll reverse corporate America if she stands up to Fox Books. And she says, like, all I really do is run a bookstore. And he cuts her off and says, like, all you really do is this incredibly noble thing. And says, Kathleen, you are a lone reed, standing tall, waving boldly in the corrupt sands of commerce. No, nobody really knows what that means, and I think she ended up leaving the conversation more confused than when she went in. But she like walks away. Now, Frank is played by Greg Kinnear, who is known for his role in the 1995 Sabrina, Little Miss Sunshine, and As Good as It Gets. And his role in As Good as It Gets is pretty well known. He was also in Mystery Men, Someone Like You, Baby Mama, Anchorman 2, and so many other things. She writes to NY152 that she's not sure if she lives the life she lives because she loved it or because she just hasn't been brave. I feel like this is a question we all ask ourselves. Like, how did we get into this situation? Are we here because we want to be, or are we here because we're just too scared to do something else?
That's so true. That is so
Right?
true. Yeah.
So we see Joe Fox later working on his boat, and Annabelle and Matthew are being dropped off to him by Jillian and the nanny Maureen. The nanny taught Matthew how to spell his name, Fox. Joe takes the kids to the fall festival where they play games, get their face painted, win a fish, and ride rides. They see that the local bookstore has the storybook lady. Now, Kathleen is reading a story to the kids, and the kids pick out their books to purchase afterwards. And Annabelle says her dad buys her all the books she wants and introduces that Joe is her nephew, Matthew is his brother. Joe tells Kathleen that they are the American family. Kathleen hands a handkerchief to Annabelle that her mother gave her that has a daisy on it to blow her nose and says daisies are her favorite flower. And Joe asks her name, and Kathleen introduces herself and says she owns the store. He introduces himself as just as Joe and buys the books. Just Joe.
Yeah. That was a
Kath-
smart move though, but it was like in retrospect kind of mean, but like I would do the same thing if I was like someone's competitor. I would not want them to know.
yeah. Kathleen says they're opening up a Fox bookstore on the corner, and Annabelle starts to say, My daddy. And then Joe covers up her mouth and says, Likes to buy a discount, but don't tell anybody that. Then Matthew spells Fox, and Kathleen says, You can spell fox. Can you spell dog? And he says, Fox. And Joe tries to distract the kids. He checks out as Kathleen tells him that she used to watch her mother not just read books, but help people turn out to whoever they were going to be because reading books as a child helps shape you more than other books do, which I think is 100% correct. My favorite book, like early on, was The Little Red Hen. It was like the first book that I learned to read. And I now have a very distinct idea that hard work is rewarded, and those who do not contribute to a project should not share in the reward. And there are consequences to not working hard. Neither of which is really actually true in the real world. So, but I have this very distinct idea because it's about a little red hen that like works really hard to make a garden and then grows wheat and bakes bread and then doesn't want to share it with anyone because no one wanted to contribute to the work that it took to grow the wheat. She does end up sharing, I think, at the end of the book, but like she's huffy about it a little bit because they didn't do anything. They were just like lazy and they're like, oh, whatever. And then they thought we should have a piece of the bread. And she was like, no, you didn't help me. You don't get bread.
Gosh, I've never read that one, but that sounds
It's
pretty
really
pretty
terrible lesson to teach a child, though, because
a little
look at me now, Hannah.
it sounds
I
hard.
don't think anyone who doesn't work hard deserves my bread.
To be fair. Fair point.
I do actually, I will like share all of my things, but I will be like salty about it a little bit if like you're lazy and not contributing and then you want to share in the reward. I'm going to be a little internally, I won't show it outward generally, but internally I'm going to be a little salty as I share all of my things with you. I'm going to be like, I worked really hard for this.
Your metaphorical bread.
Oh, good bread. No, sometimes it legitimately is bread. Okay. So, what was your one of your favorite children's books? How does it shape you?
Have you read The Giving Tree?
Mhm.
Yeah, I presume you have. I love
Absolutely.
The Giving Tree. That was one of my first books to read growing up, and I don't know, it it kind of gave me a lesson of like not giving too much to people because the tree gave
Same message.
people. Yeah. Yeah. Not giving too much, not in a hardworking way, just in a like a don't give
Yeah.
people your
Don't give all of yourself. You'll have nothing left.
yeah, exactly. And don't care about other people more than you care about yourself, which I feel like is something I've struggled with a lot growing up.
I don't
Just
know if that's actually the message of the Giving Tree, though.
well, that's my message. That's how I personally took it. I took it as don't
I
give
don't think
away.
Shel Silverstein was like, don't give of yourself to others, period.
No, but it like definitely taught me to not. care about someone as much as I care about myself. Like always put myself first, not in a selfish way, but like put my mental well-being and like my well-being.
Put your oxygen mask on first before you help others.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That's a good metaphor to explain it. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
So taught me that, and that's like still something I struggle with, especially in my relationships, like my like romantic relationships. That's still
Yeah.
something I struggle with. So I feel like that lesson is more prevalent towards that because like I will give anything to my friends. Like that lesson that goes out the window with my friends. I love my girls. Like,
Yeah.
but like
I
with
think that message just teaches you that little boys are terrible.
yeah.
It's like it like breaks off his branches and like eventually grows up to cut it, like carves his name in the tree and then grows up to cut him down and then comes
Yeah.
back and needs a place to sit. Is like stop taking everything from me, little boy.
Maybe this is why I've had an aversion to mean men.
There's your man problem.
My
Okay. We found it.
giving
Origin
tree.
Hannah's origin story is the giving tree. Okay.
Oh, that's funny.
Well, well, Joe learns that Kathleen isn't married back in the store and they go to leave. And Kathleen asks Matthew to spell cat, and he says Fox. As Joe pushes the kids out the door and shuts the door behind him, and the balloons get stuck in it, and he opens it again and says, "Good thing it wasn't the fish," which makes everybody chuckle. Now, Annabelle Fox is played by Haley Hirsch, who's known for Flight 29 Down, Lolita, and Speak. She was also in several episodes of JAG and ER. And Matthew Fox is played by Jeffrey Scaparota. It's a very difficult last name. Known for several episodes of Law and Order SVU and The Hollow Man. Now, later, Fox and Sons Books, as we see on the sign, is open, and Joe is telling Kevin and his dad and grandfather that they're doing well, and the neighborhood actually seems to love him. He says that the children's bookstore is still open nearby, shop around the corner, and the grandfather regales again. Oh, I think we had a date once. Her daughter owns it now, kind of thing.
Oh
Uh,
my God.
At Kathleen's store, Bertie is telling the group that they did $1,200 less, and Fox Books has only been open for 6 days. Not good, cutting into profits. Now, Kathleen sees Miranda through a window, and Miranda is a children's book author, and they ask when her book's being published next. She says January. She says, "Well, let me know if you need something, like getting that nut in the Observer to write something." And Kathleen asks, "What nut?" And she says, "Frank's something or other. This is just the sort of thing that would outrage him." And Miranda Margolis is played by Vianne Cox, who was known in The Rebound 2 Weeks Notice, and we'll see her as we watch the 2000 movie Erin Brockovich. It's one of the movies that breaks our 90s movie theme. But she's been on several episodes of The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, one of my faves. Now, Kathleen is talking to Frank on the way to a retirement party. Joe sees Kathleen at the party where he is with Patricia, and Kathleen runs into him at the bar as he's getting her a fresh drink. Kathleen makes small talk with him, and Joe kind of gets through the small talk and walks away. Kathleen walks away, and someone says, "I can't believe you were speaking to Joe Fox." She's like, "Joe Fox?" And he's like, "As in, he's gonna take over everything." And Kathleen says, "I didn't realize, I didn't know." And oh wait, sorry. So Kathleen is like shocked and she sees Joe at the table, the food table, and she says, "Your last name is Fox?" And he's like, Fox. And Kathleen says, "I didn't realize, I didn't know." And Joe in his mobster voice says, "Who you were with?" And he explains he's quoting The Godfather. And Kathleen accuses him of spying and says he wouldn't have put just around the corner if she wasn't the competition. And he says the entrance is around the corner and she doesn't own the phrase. Then they argue about the caviar garnish that he's taking and putting onto his plate, and he ends up taking, scraping more off. And then she gets upset, and as she's yelling at him, I don't know if you noticed, but she's like taking the caviar off of his plate and putting it back onto the just like the as the garnish. Um which I thought was really funny. She like is like, "No, that caviar is a garnish."
Is caviar good? Have you ever had it? I
I have had it on sushi, and all I could tell you is that it pops in your mouth, and I couldn't tell you much more than that. Like it's just like if when it's on fish, it just tastes like fish. So like, but it does taste like fish. So I just There's not much more I can say about it. I've never like had it on independently on crackers, which is
Okay.
how other people or like toast, like little toasts. So I also have never gone to a party where it's been a garnish.
Oh, it
So
kind of reminded me of Overboard with like her caviar when she
yeah,
got caviar.
she was like, "Oh, this is like cheap caviar," and gets really upset. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, well, Joe tells her he was at her store because he was spending time with the kids and he calls her store charming. He guesses she sells about 350,000 a year and she looks very shocked. He says he's in the business and she corrects him that she is in the book business. And Joe says, well, he is the Price Club and instead of large container of olive oil, he sells cheap books. Then he burns her by saying that he is a spy because she was like accusing him of spying. He's like, yes, I am a spy. And he says he has in his possession the super secret printout of a bookstore so inconsequential yet full of its own virtue that he was compelled to rush over there for fear that it would put him out of business. And Kathleen is shocked. Just then, Frank stops over and puts him down and ends up saying, how do you sleep at night? And then Patricia walks over and says she takes Alterdorm. Just half a pill, knocks her right out, no hangover the next morning. And then she starts complimenting Frank on his work. So she was like real tuned in to that question. Um, you'll notice she's like also very selfish, I feel. But Patricia Eden is played by Parker Posey, who's known for her role in Dazed and Confused, Blade Trinity, Superman Returns, and Scream 3. She also starred in Josie and the Pussycats, which was we talked about last week because many of the cast of Can't Hardly Wait are in that movie, and she is also in that movie.
Wait, that's cool. Okay,
Yeah.
now.
So
Oh,
there's a little another little connection. So later at home, Joe can't sleep and he goes to his computer and sends an email to Shopgirl about being worried that he's the worst version of himself. He got provoked and becomes Mr. Nasty. Shopgirl writes back and says she gets tongue-tied and her mind goes blank, so she's jealous that he can do that. NY152 writes back that he'd love to pass all of his zingers onto her, but he says when you finally say the thing that you mean to say in the moment that you mean to say it, remorse inevitably follows. And he asks to meet. Then we see Joe and Kathleen realize that they are living in the same neighborhood and they're avoiding each other on the street, at stores, etc. At Zabar's, Kathleen is avoiding Joe and she gets in a cash only line with credit and people get mad. Joe steps in and convinces the cashier to ring her up with the card because he's very charming and he wishes Kathleen a happy Thanksgiving. Then we see each of them celebrating Thanksgiving, Joe with his family and Kathleen with her friends. And later we see Birdie walking and passes that Miranda's book is in the Fox bookstore. She's doing an author signing. And Kathleen is at the store decorating for Christmas. Kathleen writes to NY152 about the Joni Mitchell song and missing her mother and needing advice. And NY152 writes back, what kind of advice do you need, and offers to help. Shop Girl is about to write back, but NY152 found her online, which is what used to happen because it would tell you like if any of your contacts were online, like it does on Facebook. It like gives you a little green dot or whatever. It would say like online now or something. I don't really remember exactly, but and then you could like chat with them over like it'd be like Messenger or something for Facebook. Essentially, it was like AIM, AOL Instant Messenger, and you could chat back and forth. That's what AIM
see,
stood for.
I don't like things that do that. I don't like being tracked. It's scary.
I think you could turn off your ability to see. I think you could turn off people's ability to see if you were online, but it was only your contacts, like people who you were in contact with. But if you turned it off, you couldn't see theirs either. So, just something to think about. You usually wanted people to see that you were online so that they would message you and you could have a little conversation after school.
Oh
Like,
wait, that's kind of cute though.
so,
Oh,
um,
okay.
well. So she starts writing back that she does need advice, and he had offered to give her advice, and she said she needs business advice. She can't give specifics. He uses the phrase from The Godfather to go to the mattresses, and she says, what is it about men in The Godfather? Ah,
I have that written down too, not the exact quote, but like I said, I enjoyed the Godfather reference, even though I've never seen the Godfather, but I always hear stuff about the Godfather. So like now I
feel
kind
like you.
of watch it.
Okay, let me know if you fall asleep in that one too.
Oh, is it
Uh,
boring?
no, I mean, no. Don't get me in trouble with every man that listens to our podcast, Hannah. It is not boring, but there are parts that are just like, I don't know, like there's action, obviously. It's The Godfather, but like there's also just parts that are a lot of dialogue, and I don't know if that would bore you or what. So, um, but Joe says The Godfather is the I Ching. It is the sum of all wisdom. It is the answer to all the questions. What should I pack for my summer vacation? Leave the gun, take the cannoli. What day of the week is it? Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Wednesday. The answer to her question is to go to the mattresses. It's not personal, it's business. He tells her to be brave. Fight to the death. Now, Kathleen talks to Frank about it and asks if he knows what goes to the mattresses means. And he says, yeah, it's from The Godfather. It's just like hilarious. And she asks him to write something about the store. Now, Frank writes something and it gets a lot of publicity. And it ends with, you are what you read, save the shop around the corner, and you will save your soul. Now, kids outside of Fox Books are picketing down the street. One, two, three, four. We don't want your superstore. Five, six, seven, eight. Go away. Close the gate. And Kathleen leads a rally in front of her store. Now, Joe and Kevin are on the treadmills later watching Kathleen on the news, and she says they have to have coffee and discounts because most of the workers have never read a book. And Joe tells Kevin that Kathleen is beautiful, but she's a pill, which I feel like is like exactly what every man I've dated has ever said about me.
Being called a pill is like crazy too, because
She's a pill. She's a pill.
that's so insulting, but also like such a funny insult. Like of all things you could say, she's a pill. She's a pill. That's like the first time I've ever heard that
Like a
too.
hard pill to swallow is kind of where that comes from.
Oh, okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah. Like a difficult, it's a difficulty is what
Okay.
that means.
Oh, that is
She's
like
a
even that's
difficulty.
insulting.
It's insulting because it's like it means that you're like a difficult person and that you're yeah. So anyway, I love it though. I love that line. She's beautiful, but she's a pill. Well, Kevin asks if Joe cares about the impact, and Joe says it's not personal, it's business. Then the news quotes him saying, I sell cheap books. I do, so sue me. And that was it. And Kevin was like, that was what you said? And Joe said, that's not all I said. And he then goes on to say what they talked about in the interview and ends up saying, like, told him we were a goddamn piazza, a place in the city where people could mingle and mix and be. And Kevin says, piazza, piazza. And he says, and I'm going to apologize in advance for swearing again, but Joe says, I was eloquent. Shit. Which I always laugh at because he was like talking about how he's being eloquent and then says the word shit, which is just like not eloquent. So I love that line. Think it's hilarious. Um, Kathleen comes back on the screen and says, I have met Joe Fox and I've heard him compare his store to a price club and the books in it to cans of olive oil. Now, shocked, Joe flies off his treadmill. Later, we see an interview of Frank on TV to talk about the shop around the corner, and we learn that he has a crush on the interviewer and she on him as they're kind of like swooning all over each other on camera.
Well, that part made me so mad.
Oh,
Oh,
it was cute though. It was funny. But back at the shop around the corner, Kathleen finds out from Birdie that all this publicity and there's no difference in sales. Unfortunate. Kathleen writes to NY152 that she needs help and wants to meet. Now, Kevin and Joe are walking down the street to meet his shop girl, and he says that she's carrying a book with a flower in it, which is from the previous movies and previous play. Um, there's a book with a flower in it. Sometimes it's a carnation. Usually it's a carnation. And Joe says, why is he even compelled to even meet her? He's not going to stay that long. They're meeting at the Cafe Lalo at 8 p.m. And he says, Kevin, this woman is the most adorable creature I have ever been in contact with. If she's even as good looking as a mailbox, I'd be crazy not to turn my life upside down and marry her. Now, Joe asks Kevin to check her out through the window. Same thing happens all the movies. The main guy asks his best friend to like, who works with them as well, to like check her out through the window, see what she looks like. So this is where the dialogue is pretty freaking the same or similar. So Kevin looks in the window and says he sees a very pretty girl, but no
I love
book.
that
which is same every movie. And then he sees a book with a flower, but the waiter is blocking. And in the movies, it's always like a coat rack is blocking her. The other movies. He says she's very pretty. And she has this, and this is where I always thought this was weird in this movie, is he says the same coloring. Like it almost makes it sound like her dyed hair coloring or something. But that comes from the play and the other movies that it's same coloring, like they mean like same skin tone, same hair color. And it's like an older term. But in this movie, like the updated movie, I was always like, she dyes her hair and that's not her real hair color? Like, what do you mean? Her coloring. And I always thought it was such a weird phrase to say, but that's where it comes from, is it comes from the original play.
Yeah, I just find that a little bit odd too. I was like, I don't know what you're trying to say right now, but I thought it was cute that he had his that Joe had his best friend looking because that's so
Yeah.
something I would do. Like that's something I
Yeah.
would do. Like I don't
Vote
want to know.
for me. I don't want to know. Yeah. So he's like, she has the same coloring as that Kathleen Kelly person. And Joe says, Kathleen Kelly of the little bookstore. And Kevin says, yeah, why not? You thought she was attractive. And this whole part is all the same. And Joe says, absolutely, yes, but who cares about Kathleen Kelly? And Kevin says, well, if you don't like Kathleen Kelly, I can tell you right now, you ain't gonna like this girl. And Joe says, why not? And Kevin says, because it is Kathleen Kelly. And Joe looks in and Kevin asks him what he's gonna do. He says, nothing. And he's gonna go home and walk away. And he does start to. And that's what happens all the movies. Okay. We see Kathleen waiting. Someone asks to borrow the chair and she says no. Joe comes back and Kathleen pretends to busy herself to not be seen. Joe walks over to Kathleen and greets her and asks to sit down. And she says she's expecting someone and is trying to get him to go away. And Joe sits down and he says he's gonna stay there until her friend gets there. He's like trying to be friendly. And this is the part in the same as well, it's all the same, except items change. Is Joe says, I think you'd discover a lot of things about if you really knew me. And Kathleen retorts, if I really knew you, you know what I'd find? Instead of a brain, a cash register. Instead of a heart, a bottom line. And like in other movies, when they work at a music shop, it's like, I would find like, and it was always like, I'd find this instrument and that instrument and like one that doesn't work well, essentially. And then in other ones, it's like they're in a leather goods shop. They have like, and it would be like I would find a briefcase and a wallet or something. So it's very interesting. Same
Like,
line, but they change
but I
out
like
the
that you
items.
like
Yeah.
that.
Kathleen is then satisfied with herself and says she finally wasn't tongue-tied. And Joe says this line again that's in all the movies. That was a perfect blend of poetry and meanness. So that's something that they say the guy always says. And he was paying her a compliment. She asks him to leave, and he does. And this is my favorite part. He sits at the table behind her. Like
I can
he's like,
see
okay,
how
sure, I'll leave. And he like goes to next door. Um, so she got out her hanky and wiped her mouth with her in her mirror, and he turns around and looks into her mirror. And he said that reminds her or him of the first day that they met. And she said the first day that he lied. And he said, I didn't lie. And she said, just call me Joe. Like he's one of those stupid 22-year-old girls. Hi, I'm Kimberly. Hi, I'm Janice. Don't they know they're supposed to have a last name? As if they're an entire generation of cocktail waitresses. And
that.
Joe, he is not a cocktail waitress, and he calls her out on meeting someone besides Frank and asks if she will be mean to this other man too. Kathleen says she won't because this other man is completely unlike Joe. He's kind and funny and has a great sense of humor. And Joe says, but he's not here. And Kathleen says he must have a good excuse. She says Joe has deluded himself into thinking he's a benefactor bringing books to the masses, but no one will ever remember him. And maybe no one will ever remember her, but plenty of people remember her mother. And Kathleen then calls him a suit, and Joe leaves hurt. Now, this was extremely hurtful in this movie, because as we remember, like, he knows that now that she's the woman that he's been corresponding with, and he has fallen for her, and she's like essentially devastating him.
Yeah.
Um,
I did feel bad for him, especially when she was like talking about the quote unquote other guy, which was him. And I was
yeah,
like, that would kind of make me feel good about myself, but it's also sad because like she doesn't like Joe himself. She doesn't
yeah.
like him like as a person, but she likes his internet persona. So I feel like that would be very hard to wrap your head around.
Yep. Now Kathleen goes and looks for an email when she gets home, but none is there. Now Joe goes home to Patricia. The next day he tells Kevin that Kathleen is a real bee. Christina asks Kathleen what happened, and Kathleen says he never came, and they said he stood you up. They make guesses as to why he didn't show, and when George shows up, he adds that to the game and suggests that he might be the rooftop killer from the paper who was arrested 2 blocks away from the cafe. Christina says, "You are so lucky," and George says, "You could be dad." Kathleen says, "He couldn't be the rooftop killer." Now she writes to NY152. She was thinking about him and he wasn't there. And she was there for a while waiting when a man who made her professional life a misery showed up. But she said exactly what she wanted to say and when she wanted to say it. And she just felt terrible, just as NY152 said she would. She said there was no excuse for her behavior and thought the man probably didn't care anyway, but even if he did, she felt bad about it. She wondered why he wasn't there and said, "All this nothing has meant more to me than so many somethings."
Such a good quote. That was so sad.
Right?
So sad.
No, Joe thought about how to reply and rewrote his response, trying to come up with an excuse. Finally, evaded the why he wasn't there with an apology. "Dear friend, I cannot tell you what happened last night, but I beg you from the bottom of my heart for what happened. I feel terrible you found yourself in additional pain, but I'm absolutely sure that whatever you said last night was provoked, even deserved." He goes on to say, "You were expecting to see someone you trusted and met the enemy instead. The fault is mine." But they have no new plans to meet. Now, Kathleen and Christina go to Bertie's for lunch, and Kathleen says that she's going to close the store. Bertie says that that's brave. She's daring to imagine that she could have a different life. She's marching into the unknown with nothing, and she offers her a sandwich. Bertie spills stories about falling madly in love with a man who ran Spain. Now later, Frank says he felt that she must have fallen in love with Generalissimo Franco, and Kathleen says people do really stupid things in foreign countries, and Frank says absolutely, they buy leather jackets for much more than they're worth, but they don't fall in love with fascist dictators. Kathleen and Frank argue about politics seriously, but end up going to talk and realize they don't love each other. Frank is falling for the interviewer from TV, and Kathleen is in love with the dream of someone else. Now Frank moves out and takes all of his typewriters. Kathleen liquidates her store, and let me tell you, that is not easy. I have worked in a few stores that have closed. It's super depressing, and the customers are the worst during that time. So they kind of show a little snippet of that. The only reason I bring this part up is because this next part is the salesperson is a young Chris Messina okay, so she goes to Fox Books and overhears a customer telling a sales guy that this customer says like, "I want the shoe books," and he doesn't know what the shoe books are, and so Kathleen interrupts and to help, and it's obvious that the sales guy has like no idea what these books are and like has no idea what he's talking about. Obviously hasn't read any books, and Joe was like watching this, and this is why I'm bringing this up because this is the guy. He's a very young Chris Messina. He's known as Danny Castellano, sorry, from the Mindy Project, which I love that show. We'll talk about that later. But later, Joe and Patricia get home and they're talking about Kathleen Kelly because Kathleen has flawless taste and knows everything. And Patricia thinks she'd make a good children's book editor and wants to offer her a job. Joe doesn't think this is a good idea, but as they're talking, they get into an elevator with a woman and her dog and the elevator operator. Patricia says Joe is insensitive, just like her, for not agreeing that he had a role in Kathleen's circumstances. And the elevator gets stuck and Joe takes charge. Patricia freaks out. The woman with the little dog is a little nervous, and Charlie, the elevator operator, like doesn't seem to know anything. He's very like out of touch, it seems like. They all sit around talking about what life-changing things they do if they get out of the elevator, and Patricia just wants to get her eyes lasered and doesn't really care what Joe has to say. She like cuts him off. They break up and he and Brinkley move out. He writes to Shop Girl, "There was a man sitting in the elevator next to me who knew exactly what he wanted, and I found myself wishing I was as lucky as he." Now, Kathleen writes to NY152 that her store is closing. She admits she's heartbroken and that part of her has died and that her mother has died all over again. And no one can make it right. And Kathleen closes the store and remembers her there dancing and twirling with her mother and locks the store for the last time. Now
Whenever,
Joe is go ahead.
like,
What?
whenever we do our pod, it's like almost rewatching the movie again, and it like gives me chills when we talk about it. And I'm like, oh, that was so messed up.
It was so. But Joe is out walking Brinkley and comes back to the boat to see his dad pulling up with things to move into his boat. He broke up with Jillian. Joe's father dated many of Joe's nannies, which we learn, which is ironic because Jillian was also sleeping with the nanny, Nanny Maureen. Joe's dad said he will need to find someone new. Then that's the easy part. And Joe says, oh, right. Yeah, it's a snap to find the one single person who fills your heart with joy. And his dad said, don't be ridiculous. Have I ever been with someone who fit that description? Have you? And Joe has a light bulb moment. We see Joe walking down the street with flowers and rings the buzzer at Kathleen's apartment. She is sick and says, who is it? And he says it's Joe Fox and asks to come up. Kathleen says she doesn't think it's a good idea because she has a terrible cold and goes on and on about all of her symptoms and sneezes on the intercom while someone else lets Joe in the building. And all of a sudden he's at her door while she's still talking about her symptoms to like no one, just the streets of New York, which is my favorite. I love that part where she's just like still talking about all these, like she's just trying to make excuses. I mean, she is sick, but like she's trying to make all these. She's like, and I have a temperature, and like no one's out there. Uh, he says he was heard that she was sick and was worried. She gets defensive and wonders if he came to gloat, and he brought her daisies, her favorite, and stays putting them in water when she tries to kick him out. We learn that George is working at Fox Books. That's how we found out she was sick. And he tells her that he broke up, and then she says that she and Frank broke up. And so the guy that she writes to also broke up with his girlfriend. They each say that they behaved badly at the coffee shop. He tells her, putting her out of business, it wasn't personal. And Kathleen says, what is that supposed to mean? I'm so sick of that. All that means is it wasn't personal to you, but it was personal to me. It's personal to a lot of people. And what's so wrong with being personal anyway? And Joe says, nothing. And Kathleen says, whatever anything is, it ought to begin by being personal. And then Kathleen asks him why he stopped by, and Joe says he wants to be her friend, even though it might not be possible. He asks what happened with the guy at the cafe, and he suggests that they meet. He leaves right before anything snotty is said again and tells her that he hopes she feels better soon. Now, Kathleen writes NY152 about the meeting, and NY152 says, sure, but right now he has a project that needs tweaking. Now, Joe runs into Kathleen at Starbucks and makes fun of NY152 for saying tweaking. He says it sounds like he's married. Kathleen writes to NY152 asking if he's married, and NY152 teases her for asking. And Kathleen tells Joe that he like brushed it off, and Joe says he didn't answer the question. Joe says maybe he's a fatty, that he's so fat he has to be removed from his house by a crane. And Joe says, what's his handle? And Kathleen doesn't want to tell him. And he's like, I'm not going to write him. Is that what you're worried about? You think I'm going to email him? And Kathleen says, all right, NY152. Joe says, NY152, 152. He's 152 years old. He had 152 moles removed. And so now he's got 152 pock marks on his face. Kathleen says the number of people who think he looks like Clark Gable. And Joe says 152 people who think he looks like a Clark Barr. Kathleen is laughing and says, why did I even tell you about this? And then Joe says 152 stitches from his nose job. The number of souvenir shot glasses that he's collected in his travels. Kathleen says, no, the number, his address. No, he would never do anything that prosaic. It is actually his address from before he moved to the boat. Kathleen says she could never be with someone who had a boat, and Joe says he has a boat, so they can never be together. And Joe adds that he could never be with someone who likes Joni Mitchell, which he knows that Kathleen likes. And we learn that Kathleen decided to write a children's book with her time, which is really nice. She found a new life for herself, and they decide to meet up later that week for lunch on Saturday. Meanwhile, NY152 also asks her to meet on Saturday, go figure, at the Garden in Riverside Park at 4 p.m. He's going to bring Brinkley. Now, Kathleen meets Joe for Saturday lunch, and they talk about the upcoming meeting and how NY152 is a West Sider. They say she could have seen him every single day and not know it. Joe says he's waited until she's primed, until he's absolutely sure there's no one else for her. Joe says, sometimes I wonder. And Kathleen says, what? And she says, well, if it hadn't been for Fox Books and you hadn't been shop around the corner and you and I had just, met. She's like, I know. He says, yeah, I would have asked for your number and I wouldn't have been able to wait 24 hours before calling you and saying, hey, how about some coffee, or drinks or a dinner or a movie for as long as we both shall live. And she's kind of stunned and she says, Jill, and you and I would never been at war, he says. And the only thing we'd fight about is which video to rent on a Saturday night. And Kathleen says, well, who fights about that? And he says, well, some people, not us. And she said, we would never. He says, if only. She says, I gotta go. And he says, well, let me ask you something. How can you forgive this guy for standing you up and not forgive me for this tiny little thing of putting you out of business? And she starts to kind of cry, and he says, oh, how I wish you would. And she says, I really have to go. He says, yeah, well, you don't want to be late. So Kathleen goes to change and meet NY152. She walks to the park and looks around. Eventually, she hears a man call out, Brinkley, and she sees Joe chasing a dog, and she starts to cry. And Joe walks up to her and says, don't cry, shop girl. Don't cry. And Kathleen says, I wanted it to be you. I wanted it to be you so badly. And they kiss, and the dog barks, and that's the end. So, what I miss?
I think that's like such a funny way to meet in a chat room. It kind of reminds me of people like meeting on Snapchat because that's like still a very common thing.
You're talking to strangers on Snapchat?
I'm personally not, but I know several people who like go through quick ad and just add everybody to try to like meet women and stuff. It's
No, don't Snapchat strangers. Anyone listening, that's a terrible idea.
it's horrible. Oh my God, I hate it. It's gross too. It's like very skanky-ish. It's like, why are you adding random people that you don't know, like out of the blue, and then trying to like get them to get with you? It's weird. But this time I feel like I don't have as many notes as I normally do because you covered like everything. And like my biggest thing was trying to learn about the Godfather reference because I was like, I've never seen the Godfather, but I think this is important and I think this is funny. So now I think I need to go watch the Godfather. I probably won't like it, but I think I need to. I think I need to. I
What's your
read,
rating? Go
oh,
ahead.
this one, I rate it a 9 out of 10.
Oh, thank goodness. I was worried.
I rate this one a
I
9
thought
out
you
of
were gonna be like, it's a 7, and I'd have to like be like, oh, podcast canceled. Just
10.
kidding.
I rated this one a 9. I did like it. I just liked it like less than like
Oh,
my
that's okay.
oh,
Okay.
my goodness. I know can't hardly wait is my highest rated one. There was another one that I rated like a 9 or like a 9.2 or something like that. Practical Magic. Yeah,
Yep.
it was Practical Magic and Can't Hardly Wait. Those are my two favorites. This I would say it's like a third or a fourth. Because
But it's
like
a good comfort movie.
it is,
Like,
I see
yeah.
that. I get exactly why you yeah, I get it. Honestly, I think this would be a 10 if it was the type of movie where I would rate it higher the first time I watched it than when I was like fully intrigued because it was kind of just nice to just watch. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it was
It's a
yeah,
light, it's
it's
a
like
light movie, not too complicated. It's writing, it's love, it's
yeah.
romantic.
I also I loved Joe's last name. I love the last name Fox. That's such a cool last name.
Are you gonna change your name to Hannah Fox? Let's get into our quick little trivia here. All right. So this is our email trivia. So when do you think that the first email was sent? I have a little trivia game for us.
Wait, this is fun. Okay, first email sent
What year?
1950 something.
1950? How old do you think it is? Okay, no. It was 1971 by Ray Tomlinson. He was a computer programmer who designed ARPANET, which is the precursor for the internet. It was like designed to send messages from one computer to another within a network. So, 1971, not 50. Okay, so what do you think that the first email said in it?
War plans.
No.
Oh,
It was QWERTYUIOP, which is like all the letters across the top of your keyboard. He just like sent the letters from left to right across the top of the keyboard. That was the
oh,
email.
no.
Yeah, he was sending it from like computer to computer that were in the same room. They were on the same network. They weren't connected directly together, but they were like on the same network, and that was the first like email. Okay. So back to now that you know that You've Got Mail is actually voiced by someone, do you know who the voice is?
No.
I mean, you wouldn't probably. So his name is Elwood Edwards, and he was actually a voice actor, and his wife worked for AOL. And so when they were looking for somebody to voice, like, welcome, and You've Got Mail, and he also says goodbye when you like sign off. Um, she had suggested, oh, my husband's a voice actor. He could do it. And that's how he got the job. He
Oh,
actually passed away just a year and a half ago. So he's been around for a little while doing the AOL thing. Now, we did mention this on the last podcast, but do you remember how AOL, like how people got AOL, like in the 90's? We
wasn't it
talked.
like, yeah, as we know, I have a terrible memory.
That's okay.
Wasn't it through like a server or something like that? Wasn't it not like the email app itself?
No, so they sent you an AOL CD in the mail, and then
Oh,
you
yeah.
put it into your computer and download the program, and it would give you like free hours of AOL access. Or if you didn't get one in the mail, you could like get a magazine, and they would be like in your magazine. Like if you got 17 magazine, there would be like an AOL CD.
Oh my gosh, I don't remember the magazine, but I do remember you talking about the CD. The magazine thing's really cool though.
Well, it's like it's in this, it's a CD in the magazine, so you would like tear the paper and pull out your AOL CD.
I'm writing
Anyway,
it so I can remember
you're
this.
writing that down so you could go find like vintage AOL CDs and do nothing with them because they don't work on current computers. Good
It's so
times.
something I would do, you know me too well.
Please don't try that. Well, that's the end of our little trivia quiz so you can learn a little bit about email and AOL. But our next
1951, not 1950.
our next watch is my next favorite movie. So these are my two top favorite movies of all time is You've Got Mail and the next one which is Twister. It's a completely different vibe, a little bit more intense, but it is a 1996 movie. Have you seen this one before, Hannah?
Nope. No, you've talked to me about it though. You've talked to me about it though. And I think I like
So this is going to be a rental on Amazon Prime for us, or unless you're like me and own it like a weirdo. But you can also rent it from Apple TV or wherever you rent movies from ever since the days of Blockbuster has closed. So wherever you get your movies now, I wouldn't know. I'm just kidding. Synopsis is during the approach of the most powerful storm in decades, university professor Dr. Joe Harding, Helen Hunt, and an underfunded team of students prepares for the prototype for Dorothy, a groundbreaking tornado gathering data gathering device conceived by her estranged husband, Bill, who's played by Bill Paxton. When Harding tells Bill that Dorothy is ready for testing, and the privately funded rival Dr. Jonas Miller, who's played by Carrie Elwes, has stolen the idea and built his own, Bill rejoins the team for one last mission. Now, I really love Bill Paxton. I adore Helen Hunt. Um, the yeah, we'll talk about it later, but and Carrie Elwes is in one of my other favorite movies, but he in this movie he plays the bad guy. It's
okay.
intense. It's about tornadoes. Be prepared. Don't watch it during a tornado. It's a little spooky. Um, so do you have any questions?
No, but didn't you? Isn't this one of your favorite movies because you were like interested in weather growing up? I feel like you like mentioned something like that.
I saw this movie and then I definitely went storm chasing with my I'm not sure if my boyfriend in high school was willing or unwilling to go storm chasing with me, or if he was just like I kidnapped him in the car. We did end up in a car with a tornado, like not far from us at one point, and a tree like came. He doesn't remember this, but I'm like, how do you not remember? This is so intense. But like, I was driving him to a friend's house, and like a tree came down, like across the road, like not. It was like further in front of the car, like not right anywhere. It
Yeah.
was good to, but as a high school student, I was like, oh my God. And like I don't have a chainsaw to cut it up, but luckily this guy like pulls up in his truck and he's got his chainsaw and he's just like, "Arr!" And then we were able to get through and go. But yeah, I totally thought in my geoprism, my little white geoprism, that I was gonna be like a storm chaser. Think Thank goodness gracious we did not encounter any twisters in that car because that car weighs like 0 pounds. It's so light. We would have been picked up. Like you probably should. It's not one you drive across the Mackinac Bridge for sure. It's a very light car.
Oh my
So
God, this is great.
it
Wait,
would
that's
be
so
such a
cool.
terrible storm chasing car, but like, yeah, I honestly, and this movie inspired an entire generation of storm chasers. We will talk more about that next week. We will also talk about my latest connection with this movie, multiple connections with this movie, meeting Helen Hunt, all sorts of things, next week. So excited. So yeah, any other questions?
Nope, I'm excited. I do not like tornadoes, so we're gonna see what I think. I'm actually terrified of tornadoes, so we're gonna see.
Okay, well, you're gonna be educated. Probably terrified, educated. Watch it with somebody that will provide you comfort, I guess.
Okay.
And I'm so excited. So,
Me too.
well, that's it for this episode of Millennial Meets Gen Z. Thanks for hanging out with us and watching along with one of my favorite movies of all time. Please join us for my next one. Don't forget to follow this podcast so you can catch each new episode every week. Leave a review if you're enjoying it. We really appreciate it. And share it with your friends, young and old, because this is for all generations to get caught up on some of the movies that made the 90s. And come find us on Instagram, Facebook. We've got clips, we've got photos, we've got all the moments that don't fit into the episode, and more information on the things that did. Embarrassing sometimes for me, but we put them out there anyway. Catch you next time, and please remember to be kind and rewind.
Thanks for listening, everybody.